See, together we will rise. We fight, be a ninja for what's right.
Hey there, thanks for tuning into Doc Bricks. I'm Chris, and today we have a special Ninjago MOC review, which is the first kind of these videos, but hopefully there'll be many more to come. Now, Mockist Brick Legends has created so many amazing Ninjago MOCs based on things that we saw in the TV show, but either got a set of that wasn't really up to par with what you would expect to see for a model of that caliber, or models that simply were never made into Lego sets themselves. And for today, we're going to be taking a look at his amazing Preeminent MOC. In Ninjago Season 5, the Preeminent was one of the main villainous forces. It was the physical embodiment of the Cursed Realm, eventually defeated by Nia after being unleashed by Morrow, and the Preeminent made another appearance in Season 11 during the Kaiju Protocol series of episodes. It is a really cool and important Ninjago character that I was honestly pretty surprised that we never ever got a physical set for, whether it was for Ninjago Legacy or for Possession. We never got it as a physical model until now. Now, I will have to say off bat, and I'll talk about this a lot in the review, but I was so impressed by the absolute caliber of the MOC that Brick Legends was able to create. It truly felt like I was putting together a real Lego set. I had such a blast making this. I definitely want to make more Brick Legends MOCs, so of course, if you are aware of his channel or are aware of the MOCs he makes, do go check that out in the description below and let me know what you want to see me make next, because I am such a big fan of his work. It was a really fun build, felt like making a set, and without further ado, let's just jump right in to the review. Okay, so this is the Preeminent MOC, created by Ninjago YouTuber Brick Legends. I purchased the instructions from his website for $15 US, which included all of the parts lists to build this, and surprisingly, some of the best instructions I have ever worked with when making a custom model. Now, initially, I kind of selected this as a trial run. I buy a lot of instructions for MOCs, and sometimes they're kind of hit or miss. A lot of times, even with stuff like Brick Vault, which is some of the best in terms of Star Wars MOCs, you'll get instructions that honestly just are not quite good, or you get MOCs that clearly only work digitally and really fall apart and are fragile. But surprisingly enough, when building this, it was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. The instructions were some of the best instructions I've ever had for a custom Lego model. To a point where, as I was building it, I literally forgot halfway through I was not building an official Lego set. I counted only one, not even a mistake, like a minor thing in the instructions that Lego probably wouldn't do themselves, and everything else felt like you were actually building a Lego set and reading real Lego instructions. So first of all, right off the bat, I just want to say kudos to Brick Legends and whoever worked on the instructions for this model, because I was completely blown away by how good they were, by how authentic they were to actually constructing a real Lego set, and it was a really great experience. It felt like I was putting together a big set, like a big mech style of set, and I kept feeling deja vu, like, oh yeah, I remember this is similar to the instructions where I was putting together Kai's fire mech from the Ninjago movie. Altogether, all the different pieces really felt like I was building a set, which is really impressive because it is a lot harder to make instructions for MOCs than you think, and it's a lot harder to make them good and feel like official Lego instructions. So with that out of the way, I do want to showcase the Preeminent itself. So one thing I do like about the set is it's kind of displayed, or it is built like it is supposed to be like an actual set. There's a couple of things that I think an official set wouldn't do. It is unstable in certain areas in terms of obviously being a MOC and not an official set, but for a MOC, it's probably a lot more stable than I initially expected it to be, and certainly one of the best MOCs in terms of being stable and in terms of acting like a normal Lego set. I like how they even have a side build here. Like, this is a little ghostly possessed boat as a side build, which is really something that makes it feel like a Lego set itself. And if you had a bunch of different minifigures, you could populate them in the boats and pose them around the stands of the arms and whatnot. This feels like a nicely put together set. So the first thing, I just want to get this out of the way before we jump into things, that yes, this has a smaller boat to it. This is just a little bit of a schooner or a dinghy type of thing from the City of Styx. It is obviously possessed. You're utilizing the transparent green horn piece from the Ninjago Prime Empire wave, which is a really smart piece usage, which feels like it was made almost perfectly for this. It's super simple, just using the standard castle rowboat piece, but I think it does the job fine as a side build. Of course, though, the main star of the show here is the Preeminent. And I want to start off by talking about posability because when talking about a large action figure or mech-like build, posability is always the most important thing to me. So the legs can be posed, and it does have knees, so as you can see, this is obviously a MOC, so it has a little bit more posability than you would expect from a set. You can have it be lifting the leg upwards. There's obviously that classic shot in the show where it kind of dips its foot in the water, lifts it up, and then just decides to keep on going. The feet themselves can be rotated all around, so you can rotate the feet out on ratchet joints. Unfortunately, the feet are really just adjusted and mounted on single ratchet joints, and they do have a lot of articulation, like you can bend them back and forth, which is great for articulation, but I think this set is a really good example as to why LEGO does not actually give you a ton of feet articulation, because it's gonna do stuff like that. Whereas you can see, it wants to fall over. Thankfully, you can see how sturdy it is. Like there's a lot of torque being put when it's toppling over, and this is really staying together. So that's impressive. But what I will say is that because the feet do not have that much guidance around them and there's not a lot of things that you can do to keep it stable, you really have to just mess around with it before you can find the perfect sweet spot to actually make this stand up. Obviously, I had it standing. Oh, that's leaning a little bit. But okay, I think this is standing. Obviously, I had it standing in the beginning. It's not impossible to make it stand, and while building it, I was actually pretty impressed by just how posable it was while still being able to stand up. But you do have to mess with the feet because there's a lot of articulation in the feet, and the joints just are not really strong enough to hold up the weight. So just one thing I do want to point out. Otherwise, this has a great amount of articulation for the tentacles, which are mounted on mixel joints, which is very cool. The one thing is that this is probably the only thing that an official LEGO set would not do, is clip on these elements based on the clip system here, these kind of coral seaweed elements right here, because the way they're set up, they do not actually push all the way into the clip. It's a little bit hard to describe without zooming in, but there are little minute tolerances in the LEGO pieces, and because of that, actually we can take a look at the one on the other side here. If you place it down all the way on the clip, it doesn't fully clip in. Like a part of it is actually sticking out when I have it fully inwards. The only way to get this to be actually straight is, as you're pushing it in, the piece kind of stops right here just because of plastic tolerances, so it's really only held in by about half a clip, where you can see right there it's held in by half a clip, which is fine, and you can kind of stress the clip a little bit and push it all the way in, but it's just not the way the parts were intended to be mounted, but it's really not a big deal, it works totally fine. Everything else is on mixel joints, so you can move around the tentacles up at the top here, so you have nice tentacles sprouting out of the top. Obviously, you can rotate these tentacles around the massive eye or mouth, whatever you want to see that as, however you want as well. So these have some sort of a flex to them. Rotate the tentacles up here. You have tentacles which curve around the sides of the beast itself for this side. And you also have these gigantic claw hands, which is what it kind of was using throughout the episode. It had these big claw grabbers on the sides, like the cranes were used as claws. Even these arms are mounted, and they have elbows, so you have the ratchet joints mounted here, and then you can swing them up and down for the blades on the hands themselves. There's a lot that you can do here, like this crane can be angled and moved around. You've got a lantern on this side that's kind of possessed with the ghostly spirit energy, and altogether, this is probably the best physical depiction I have ever seen of the Preeminent. It is just so impressive to me how they were able to get this done in terms of actually mounting each and every one of these different pieces onto the torso itself, which really does add a lot to the playability factor of this by having so many things you can move around. Now, looking at the back of the model, this is what the back itself looks like. Now, I'm guessing that maybe you have these pins on the back here so you can actually put the boat on the back. So what you can kind of do is if you line up the holes here, you can sort of mount the boat onto these back pins. Now, I do not know if this was the intent, but it's something you could do. Like, you can put the boat back there, so that is nice, but otherwise, you do have a nicely built-up design. You've got like a treasure chest here, which is even hiding some stuff, and of course some barrels on the back. Obviously, it's not really meant to be seen from the back, where you can see a lot of that structure, and adding the boat in the back also made it a little bit back-heavy. So again, gotta be very careful with the way you balance this, but I think it still looks pretty good. It looks very respectable for what kind of a build it is, and I really like how it does have this detachable piece where you can actually cause it to sail off. Now, in terms of aesthetics and building techniques, I want to talk about the building techniques of this because I was really impressed by how everything came together. Obviously, you have the center eye, which is a big focal point. It's almost an icon of the build itself, where the center eye is very striking. It is done really well. What's very cool is that it's also glow in the dark, so if you shut off all of the lights, the eye does glow in the dark, and you can see that it has a very strong glow, so in the dark, you really have the glow being brought out and emphasized, which is very cool. It's just a good piece usage. Turning the lights back on, you can see that each and every part of the build feels like it's almost been cobbled together from different buildings, which was the entire point of the Preeminent. You've got this kind of wooden house structure here, you have a tentacle creeping out of that building there, you've tentacles coming out of the sides. I like how you have different wooden panels just asymmetrically attached on the top, and everything is done with really great care. I think that this feels like a lot of attention was paid to the details of what this looks like on screen, and really trying to recapture the aesthetics of this kind of monster, which makes it just look so accurate to the TV show. Anyone could see this who has seen the episode and say, there's the Preeminent, there it is. And since it's so unlikely we're ever going to get this as a Lego set, this was a really fun thing to put together. Now, I do want to take a note of course, with the building techniques, there are a couple of things that I feel were a little bit questionable in terms of just making it stable, and that's just really mostly centered around these back feet, where you really have to I am really struggling here to try to keep it standing up. Obviously, you have these being posable, and I like how you can pose them around, but I feel like in this case, I kind of would have been happier if they restricted the movement of the feet, because if it was treated like any other Ninjago set mech, which really does remove the articulation in the ankle joint there, then it would have stood up a lot better. So I think this is a good example as to why LEGO does not, in fact, have so much articulation around ankles nowadays, but this is still possible to pose, and it is still fun to play around with. Now, the aesthetics, again, going back to it, I like the color scheme, and the color blocking is surprisingly really solid for this from what you would expect from a cobbled together monster. It's very easy when you're making something like this to really just spread colors everywhere, but I think the designer did a really good job of making sure the color blocking made sense. The only teal that you see feels unnatural. It feels like it's bursting out of the walls, where you've got the skin of the Preeminent that is embodying these houses. You then have a nice transition between the dark blues, the wooden browns, and then some dark browns down the legs. Of course, as you go lower and lower, you have more blacks in the legs itself, and these spiky things, which also feel mechanical and not really part of the main organic mass of the creature, are in a different color. Like you have the cranes being used here as parts of the different aspects of this design. Altogether, this is a really well-built and well-designed model. It's a lot of fun to play with, it's so much fun to pose, and even though it does take a lot of time to get a good pose, you can basically make it look good in whatever pose you want it to be in. Like if you want this walking forwards, you can get it in a walking position if you just try hard enough. Like, if you're careful with it, you spend a lot of time posing, this is walking. Like you can see here at an angle, it's kind of almost hunched forward. Oh, yep, it's hunched forwards, as long as you make sure it doesn't topple over. But again, you just really can if you spend the time to pose it, and you take the time and you are really dedicated in getting a fun pose out of it, you can do a lot with this model. It is really poseable, it is really fun. Yes, it's not perfect. It doesn't feel like an official set in the fact that it does topple over a lot more than official Ninjago mechs. But for a MOC, and for a MOC that is trying to balance posability, playability, and aesthetics, this is so impressive. And I certainly would love to buy more of Brick Legends MOC instructions now that I built this. I kind of treated this as a trial run where I was like, okay, if the instructions aren't good, or if the model isn't that good as it appears, then maybe I'll just do this one and call it good. But I think I'm very confident in saying that I want to build more of these MOCs. These are some of the closest MOCs that I've built in terms of feeling like official sets. Putting this together felt like putting together an official set, and that's probably the highest praise that I can give any sort of MOC that is setting out to be something like this. So, thank you to Brick Legends for selling the instructions on his website. I have that website linked down in the description below. To be completely transparent, I don't watch a lot of LEGO YouTubers. I don't think I've ever seen one of his videos, but that's not really anything against him. I literally do not watch LEGO YouTube videos. Like, I only watch one YouTuber, and that's Jangbricks, and that's the only LEGO YouTuber I see. So, really, I found this by just going on Google, and I found the instructions available online, and then I was like, oh, cool, he has a YouTube channel. That's awesome.
I care about the instructions. So I would love to see in the comments below, what do you folks think about some of the other instructions on there? I'm seeing so many exciting builds that are related to Ninjago on the website. There's a UCS Misfortune's Keep, there's a Garma Mecha Man, which looks really good from the Ninjago movie. Of course, there's Borg Tower, and I also have seen some videos of his. Now, of course, after building this, I went and checked out some videos, which were very cool, and I saw there's like a UCS Iron Doom. So this is my official request. If you ever watch this, I'm a big fan. If you ever make the Iron Doom instructions, I will be there day one to buy it and build it. So thank you all so much for watching, and big kudos to Brick Legends for making such a creative build. I love the way this is done. It is so unique. It is so enjoyable in the way it came together. Very talented mockist in terms of actually compositing this type of build. And that's all I have to say for this for now. So I hope you enjoyed this rather unorthodox Ninjago MOC review.
Alright, and with that, we have summed up our review of the Preeminent Ninjago MOC. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of this build? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Has this maybe inspired you to purchase the instructions and build it yourself? I certainly had a blast putting this together. Again, many thanks to Brick Legends for just publishing instructions for these for purchase, because this was a really fantastic experience from start to finish. Really did feel like building a Lego set, and I am so happy to finally have the Preeminent as a physical Lego model, especially because with Legacy discontinued and Ninjago not really focusing on villain builds, it's highly unlikely that we would ever get this as a model again. So I, for one, am so glad to actually have a screen-accurate but also fully playable model of the Preeminent, and I can't wait to bring you more Ninjago MOC reviews. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Duckbricks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more Lego news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming away very soon, and bye for now.